It is time to record your podcast. Aren't you excited? I do have some basic recording tips for you because if this is the first time you've recorded an episode, you might be freaking out a little bit. And that's normal. That's normal. The more you do this, obviously, the easier it's going to be. You're going to develop your own workflow and way that you structure your recordings. But until you get into that whole structure, I do have some basic tips to keep in mind as you're recording. The first is, whatever your recording setup is, keep it consistent. I wouldn't use one program one day and another program another day, unless you're having some technical issues and you're troubleshooting or whatever. Stick to the same system. Create a workflow within that system so you feel comfortable with that. And then later, if you want to change it, that's fine. Go ahead and change it. But the more consistent you can keep everything, the easier it's going to be for you. If you can have a backup of your recording, have a backup. I know you guys don't have a lot of equipment probably, and that might be hard to do. But for example, if you are using a remote recording service to record your podcast, where you have all of your guests meeting at a link and you click a button to record, it's not a bad idea for you to at least record your portion of the interview on your computer as well, to open up QuickTime and record it as well. That's a backup of your side of the conversation. It's not the end of the world if you don't have that, but I always feel more safe if I have some sort of backup, just in case, because we are working with technology here, and even the best services can be frustrating sometimes, right? I also want you to be prepared for any delays. So this is really important when you're working with guests. I usually schedule my recordings so I have at least 15 extra minutes at the start usually, so I can troubleshoot any kind of tech issues we might have. And that's simply because a lot of the people that you're going to be talking to don't have a background in podcasting or tech. This may be the first time they've ever been on a podcast, and it's new to them, just like creating a podcast is new to you. And so I love having them meet on the link a little bit earlier. It gives me a chance to do some tests to make sure their mic sounds good, that their headphones or earbuds are plugged in, that they can hear me and I can hear them. And it's also good for just building rapport with your guest, because again, they might be a little bit nervous, and having a few extra minutes to just chit chat back and forth with you can really go a long way. But be prepared for those delays. Build in extra time during your recording time. So if you give them an hour slot, be prepared for 15 minutes of that to be a little bit of troubleshooting or just getting to know you. It goes a long way when you're interviewing your guests. We want them to feel as comfortable as possible. Make sure both you and your guests have the right recording equipment and it's set up properly, right? So that's easier to do on your end. Make sure your mic is plugged in and your headphones are plugged in. Everything is set to go before you go to the recording page. Again, you might have to do some troubleshooting with your guests, but it's important that they have a heads up of what equipment you want them to have, if at all that's possible. So make sure they know what your expectation is. And also, while you're recording, I want you to watch the clock. Any kind of recording program basically counts up once you hit the record button. I want you to be very mindful of that time. This goes back to when we were talking about your show format. You do have flexibility within your podcast. If a podcast is going great and the conversation is amazing, you can extend it. But I wouldn't make a habit out of it. Your audience has subscribed to your show or is listening to your show because they expect something. So when you break out of that and go a little bit against the norm, you throw them off just a little bit. If there's a good reason to do that, fine. But don't let it be because you forgot to watch the clock. And then finally, once you're done recording and you hit that stop button, I always make sure that I have everybody's file before I let anybody leave. And that can be tough if a guest needs to hurry off and go somewhere. But if at all possible, stay there, make sure you get the files, and however you have it set up, whether you're using a remote recording service, make sure those files are uploaded so you can grab them from there. If you are doing something where you're just exchanging files another way, make sure you get the files. It is so much more difficult to get the files after you've said goodbye to the person after the interview than if you just took a little bit of extra time. And I know this can be difficult because once we're done with an episode, we are like, oh, we're done recording. But make sure you take that extra step. Make sure you have all of the files before you let anybody go. I would also make sure you listen to the files as well. So once you have the files, just take a couple extra minutes, push the play button on those files, and make sure they turned out okay. You want to make sure you have everything you need. And if you follow those simple steps when it comes to recording, you will save yourself so much time and you'll really save your sanity in the end.